And on World Cup as well, infrastructure. It is starting to be built in some ways, but the question from Grown Duck, what's going on with all the World Cup projects and building the infrastructure for soccer in this country, especially in Vancouver and Toronto? Toronto, it seems like they haven't really started yet. Vancouver, Alex, I know you were out at Memorial on New Year's Eve day. It seems like that is slow to get starting as well. Like at this point, the World Cup's next year.
It's a huge worry. It's a massive worry. I think for this country has a huge hole in terms of infrastructure at all levels, professional level, but also the amateur level. Like it's a huge problem in Vancouver. You see it where there's not enough pitches for youth and adult to all play soccer. Like someone's constantly getting sacrificed, or even have kids. If you go to like a training, just, you know, sometimes my team trains late at night in the middle of the week, and you go to like an Empire Field and you look and there's like 6 U12 teams all sharing a pitch, and they're all just crammed in. And you're like, what's going on here? How do you kind of make, like, that can't be, you know, great for your development, that you're getting crammed in just to fulfill space, especially in the winter, right? Where even here, there's a lot of grass pitches, but there's no lights on any of them. So in the winter, all of a sudden, a bunch of the fields drop because you can only use them up until 5, etc. So there's a huge infrastructure problem in this country. And I do worry that not enough's being done, because even the projects here, like a Memorial you mentioned, there's also going to be training at Killarney that helps, but it's only going to be 3-4 pitches. I think the city, if we're going to be realistic, the amount of pitches they need is pushing like 10, 20, 30 to not just meet the demand, but anticipate what's going to come with that World Cup boost, with kids wanting to play the sport, etc. So yeah, I am a bit worried that we're hitting 2025 and you go to a Memorial, the shovel isn't in the ground, so to speak. And I imagine the same is in Toronto from my experience living there. So yeah, I think there's going to be some big questions to be asked at the grassroots level, because I think professionally, you know, things will move along, especially, you know, teams like the CPL and NSL, they're pushing to have, you know, more venues built at the professional level. That's great, but I do really worry about the grassroots level, having seen it firsthand here in Vancouver over the last couple of years.
Having the CPL, we're entering year 7, the NSL, this is going to help the infrastructure development in a lot of cities in the country that either took soccer for granted or just rolled on old infrastructure. I remember a conversation I had with Michael Grange back in the day when I was at Sportsnet, and his son was playing somewhat like good level rep soccer in Toronto, and he talked about how envious they all are when they would go to Oakville or Halton, one of those suburbs in Hamilton, like Alliston or something. And I was like, really? What do you mean? He's like, oh, the facilities are incredible. I'm like, better than where you are in like good Toronto? And he's like, yeah, in good Toronto, they haven't updated anything since the 70s. And that doesn't make sense to your brain when you think about like, well, Toronto's the major metropolis. Look at the participation levels. Like that's where you think you would have some infrastructure and investment. And that's not the case, right? That's the major metropolitan cities where that is often taken for granted, or it gets held up by all this red tape and bureaucratic bullshit and they don't get anything done. So you need big things like the creation of a league, like a World Cup, in order to have, you know, that change be created. And it is nerve-wracking to see that it seems quite slow, but they always seem to get their shit together in the final hour. BMO's a great example. That was a Lego stadium, right? That was put up for the 2007 U20 World Cup that Toronto FC got to kick off at, and they've built it into now a stadium that's going to host World Cup matches, which seems insane, but it's, you know, it all kind of happened when it looked like it wouldn't in the final hours kind of before they really, really needed it. So I'm hopeful that that'll be the case in the Vancouver and Toronto area, and I hope that there'll be a legacy, a long-standing legacy. But I would like to see over the next couple decades a change where we stop taking that for granted, and we do have multi pitch parks and kind of what I would call is like a tournament-style venues for amateur football. Because when I was a kid, whenever we would go to Michigan or Ohio, any time we would go to a place that resembled where we were from, it was always 5-6 times bigger, obviously better, but like it was just bigger. Every multi-venue park was 2, 3, 4 more pitches, or times more pitches in size. So look, we're not going to be the States when it comes to infrastructure, but I hope that come the next decade we get a better understanding of how it benefits not just at a national team and a big pro level, but it's just important for the game and society to have more of those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, the big three cities in Canada, when it comes to Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, you're not going to have that space to put in 30 soccer pitches within the city's core. There's a lot of space in the suburbs, less and less space, but there's more areas for potentially those major American-style sportsplexes where you have 6 pitches, 2 hockey rinks, and 5 basketball courts. Like, that is a thing that they have a ton of in the U.S., especially in suburbia, which that country seems to be built on, and Canada a little bit less so, with so many people in just this thin strip right next to the border, and so many people just in really 3 major cities as well, that you're not going to have that space to build things. In terms of World Cup infrastructure, it will be fine. Like, things for these big events work out. They don't necessarily work out in the perfect planned out way that has legacy and environmental sustainability and all of that. But in terms of having the facilities there for the World Cup, they'll be there. Like, that always happens with these big events.
Well, I would just implore this, especially like the cities, get creative too. Like, sometimes if you, for example, like you go to these big cities, they find a way in Europe, right? Like, you walk around, you notice mini pitches, you notice little futsal courts. If, there's not a room to put up a bunch of, 100 times 60 turf pitches everywhere, although I'm sure there's some creative solutions they could look at. Like, I don't know, is there some solution where you could be putting them in shopping malls, for example, right? Is there could you put it on the roof of a shopping mall, as crazy as that sounds? I don't know, but there's definitely more room to squeeze things in and to not have that sort of infrastructure be an afterthought. Because, I won't go into that side of thing, but even just like, for example, community centers are lacking here, ice rinks, a lot of that sort of stuff. Is there ways that, little soccer courts, little soccer pitches can be packaged into that whole idea? I think there's a very strong chance it could be.
It takes strong people in political positions to withstand the lobbying from real estate developers who just want to use space to sell condos or build malls that they're, it's a multi-year project that employs many people, to have some type of sustainability or some type of benefit to the community. And in Toronto, but before you guys moved here, there was part of the bureaucratic red tape was when they were trying to build these areas, revitalize Queens Quay, for example. There was a lot of people in city council that's, look, you can't do this without creating some type of park space or some type of play space. And these developers and builders didn't give a shit about that. So a lot of that kind of didn't happen or would get held up. And sometimes, they'd still find a way to get shovels in the ground to build what they wanted to build. But really, if you guys both know City Place and anyone in Toronto, that's one of the few areas where they really enforced building a school, building green space, keeping a good, whatever that acreage block is in the middle of City Place, where you have a park land and a multi-use experience. There's got to be more creative ways to do that. They built the well. Can you put an arena in the well? Could you put a turf pitch or double deck it? Like, I love what they've done with Maple Leaf Gardens, which you guys both have experience having been at Ryerson. We need to be more creative in these new builds to find ways to incorporate sport. 100%.
I mean, there's several areas like that. Like, when Alex and I were living together in Toronto, we'd regularly play at Regent Park, which has completely been revitalized. Even in the 5 years that I was living in that area, it completely revitalized itself from where it was.
Mm-hmm.
But revitalization projects and building communities, it's just, there's so much political red tape. There's so many people that don't necessarily see the value in building community spaces. And we're 3 podcasters at this point. Like, we're not necessarily making those decisions. And I don't see any of us running for office at any time soon.
I would vote
either.
for Alex. I mean, Alex has obviously got the best chance. He's bilang. He's very photogenic. He speaks well, and he's got ideas. So, Alex, you got my vote.
AGR 2040. Let's make it happen.
It's also like, right? AOC, AGR. You got like you're already there, man. You're already there. Watch out, Adam Vancouver-den.
Maybe I'm putting in the pieces and you didn't know it.
Buddy.
AGR hits the office. I don't know if that's a series the world's ready for. So far, I like the podcasting thing. It's pretty fun.